talk long today. Jesus, take the wheel. Take it from my hands. Jesus, take this baseball bat. That's not what it says. Thanks, Roland. Anyways, the title of this message is Exit 131. That's gonna make no sense to you, and that's the point. It's Exit 131, and we'll get to that story here in a moment. I wanna encourage you, because a lot of what I've been talking about lately is specific around how do we continue to build a community of people that are just the loveliest group? How do we build some lifelong connections to one another, to our Creator? How do we continue to create a space where people can learn and expand and be safe to really move beyond where they're at in their faith? I don't know about you, but I do not want to stay where I am in my faith. Anyone want to stay there? Anyone satisfied with what we know or have experienced about God? I'm definitely not. If you are, I want to challenge you that there's so much more to know about God, about ourselves, about Christ in us, all of those things that we talk about. So this is another kind of thing that I've talked about before, but maybe not from this angle, and it's a little bit of a revelation that I got. Robin and I were having a conversation just about partnership and what it looks like to have a healthy partnership, and I'll tell you that story in a little bit. But I want to first talk about for a moment David and Jonathan. David and Jonathan might have had one of the most important, celebrated, and strongest connections of any friends in the Bible. It is a very, very interesting, if you dive into it, it at times even seems like there might have been some sort of intimate connection between them, because that's how deep the relationship was. And that's not my point today, but there's actually a point in here where it says that David loved Jonathan more. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of a woman, in the Psalms, or in 2 Samuel. Like, there's this very, very deep connection between Jonathan and David that I would say is probably the greatest friendship that the Bible has seen. I really do. I don't think there's a connection between two people that was greater than this. And so I want to give you some background on them for a moment. David was a shepherd. Jonathan was a prince. David grew up in the fields tending sheep. You have to understand, shepherds are a low position. It's like thieves and beggars and shepherds, because a lot of shepherds were considered thieves because they would allow their sheep to graze on other people's land, and it was like they were stealing from the land to feed their sheep. They were oftentimes run off from people's land. Don't keep your sheep here, get out of here. They were nomads. They were essentially homeless a lot of the times. It sounds like David was, living in his father's beautiful mansion, and then he went out and tended the sheep. No, he probably lived out there. And if they had some sort of camp set up or some sort of house or a boat, it would have been very, 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 very simple. And they would have moved a lot, depending on where there was green grass growing and where there was a good place for their sheep to graze, and they had to be able to do that. Jonathan was a prince. Jonathan grew up in the palace. He was trained in the finer things. He was trained for war. He was trained to use weapons. He was trained in things that David necessarily wasn't trained in formally. Jonathan was in line for the throne. He was going to be king. As we read on and understand their story, you find out that David took essentially his best friend's spot and became king. David, a lowly shepherd. David, somebody who came from nothing. David, who is one step above a thief and a beggar, ended up taking this royal prince's position. I don't know if any of you watched the coronation yesterday at like something a.m. in the morning, 5 a.m. or something like that. Anybody watch that? Y'all are, a couple of taped it. There didn't seem to be as much enthusiasm as usual around these things. A lot of people are kind of over it. I get it. A lot of Britain is over it. But obviously this has been happening for a long time. Can you imagine if like right before they put the crown on Charles's head, just right before that, some guy off the street walked in, kicked him off of that chair, that coronation chair that's like 800 years old and has been, everyone that's coronated has been coronated on that, kicked him off the chair, sat down, and they crowned like Joe Smith over here, the guy that begs by the CVS. That's the scandal of Jonathan and David, if you will. It's a big deal. So David takes the throne. They somehow keep their friendship. And this is why I say it's probably one of the greatest friendships, because it says David wrote after Jonathan died specifically. Oh, before that, when David took Jonathan's spot as king, Jonathan said this. He said, "You will be king over Israel, and I will be second to you." Jonathan took this very humble approach, this very giving and sacrificial approach to his friendship with David, where he recognized the greatness in David, so much so that he was able to take second place, even though probably his entire life he dreamed that one day he would be king. When Jonathan died, David wrote this about both Saul and Jonathan. He said, "In life they were loved and admired, and in death they were not parted. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. How the mighty have fallen in battle, Jonathan lies slain on your heights. I grieve for you. Jonathan, my brother, you were very dear to me. Your love for me is wonderful, more wonderful than that of a woman." Very interesting. David seemed to understand what a true, deep, connected friendship looked like. He seemed to get it. It seemed to have great value in his life. He wrote about it. All through 1st and 2nd Samuel, he wrote about it and referenced it in the Psalms. This was an important thing in his life. And I would say that Jonathan was a great friend to David, clearly, but I would say David was a great friend to Jonathan, because even after Jonathan's death, when one of Jonathan's children, Mephibosheth, could not walk, David sat and in that society, if somebody had some sort of disability, they were once again very, very low. And David brought Mephibosheth to honor Jonathan in and sat him at the king's table. So there seemed to be this reciprocal friendship and kindness between them, where they went above and beyond what most of us do in relationship with one another to make sure that the other one feels honored, loved, and respected and valued. Really beautiful. Now, this is also David in Psalms 55, if we can put that up there, just as you leave the booth. Who's clapping now, buddy? I just waited for him to leave. Took 3 steps down and I said, Psalms, okay, I'm not gonna mess with you too much. Psalms 55, chapter 12, it says, chapter 55, verse 12 says, this is David writing. "For it is not an enemy who taunts me, then I could bear it. It's not an adversary who deals insolently with me, then I could hide from him. But it is you, a man, my equal, my companion, my familiar friend. We used to take sweet counsel together within God's house. We walked in the throng. Let death steal over them. Let them go down to Sheol alive. For evil is in their dwelling place and in their heart." I assume he's not referencing Jonathan here, but he's referencing somebody who was a deep friend of his. Somebody who betrayed him. Somebody who turned their back on him. He says essentially, I can understand if my enemy did this to me. Somebody that I don't know did this to me. But no, the person that did it to me is somebody that I had a very deep companionship with. I want to ask you this question real quick. How many of you have ever been deeply betrayed? You haven't lived. So much fun. Plotting, the revenge. I don't do that. Sure. How did it feel? Did it feel good to be betrayed? Somebody turns their back on you, somebody that you've lived with or been around or given your heart to, or just someone who's a great friend. Somebody you thought would never do that to me. Now, let me tell you, my story is no deeper and more difficult than anyone else's in this room, but I have experienced great betrayal by dozens, if not hundreds of people in the last 5 years of my life, and it sucks every time. You don't get used to it. It's not like you're like, yippity-doo-dah, it's Betrayal Monday, here we go. It doesn't feel good to be betrayed. And the first and oftentimes lasting response that comes along with somebody breaking our trust, betraying us, turning their back on us, not keeping their word, etc., is, I will never do this again. Now, I'm gonna be very careful and honoring because I want to, and it's the right thing to do. But the mother of my children, who is an amazing human and an amazing person, I'm sure we both hurt each other a ton. My hands are not clean. But the hurt that I experienced in that relationship, whether my fault or hers, the depth, the first thing that came to mind it's been about 6 years now, is I never will do this again. Or if I do, it's gonna be on my terms. I'll never let anybody have the edge on me. I'll never let anybody feel like, that I need them. That I can be heartbroken or disappointed. Never again. My relationships are going to look different because I'm going to protect what's most important to me. It's a real struggle. And it distorts greatly our ability to have decent relationship. Now, I didn't want to tell this publicly, but being that I'm getting married in 5 days, I will tell you, you can probably tell just by looking at the two of us, she has an edge on me. And she could probably treat me like total garbage, and I would still stay there with her because I'm that in love with her. And I probably will never have healthy boundaries, so therapists, leave me alone. Everything I said would never happen, would never be, is that and 10 times more. But it is very, very scary. And moments, it's hard and it's scary. And some of us in this room have sworn off ever having that kind of connection with a human being again, whether as a friend or a partner in life, because we were hurt that bad. Now, I don't know who David's talking about here, but the hurt feels deep. I mean, he literally wishes that the person goes down to Sheol, which some people translate hell. I actually don't, but that's another sermon. For evil is in their dwelling place and in their heart. And then he says, let death steal over them. In other words, he says, I hope you die and go straight to hell. That's how I feel about you. Now, I'm not gonna have you raise your hands because you'll feel bad about it later. I'm guessing some of us in this room have been there with people before. It would be better off if they were dead. It would be better off if everyone's like, oh, no, I've never thought that. You're full of crap. And next week I'm gonna talk about honesty. All right? There's never been murder in my heart. Okay, sure. You have murder in your heart when someone cuts you off, let alone betrays you, all right? Been there, done that, where it's like, I wish, is this a pastor admitting that he's hoped someone would die? Yeah, it is. If you think less of me, I'm gonna give you a lot more reasons. Yeah, that's real. It's real that people can hurt us so deep that we would be like David, the great psalmist, a man after God's own heart, who would say, I hope they die. You'll never do that to another person. I hope you die. By the looks of it, you're not gonna make it to heaven either. And I'm glad about that too. Right? It's real. I look at this and I go, how can that guy have this relationship the way he has with Jonathan? We don't know where this, it's very hard to piece chronologically what David's talking about specifically in the Psalms and when it happened. We don't know if this happened before or after Jonathan passed away, but long into David's old age, he's still honoring his friend Jonathan. So we have to assume that David had this kind of friendship and affection for Jonathan that went long beyond this moment we're talking about here, where someone betrayed him so deeply that he said, I hope you die. So this is an assumption, so bear with me, and I'll put it out there. This is not something I'm 100% sure about, but I'm about 98% sure about. I'll say this. I would guess that the man that we look at in the scriptures and say he might have one of the greatest friendship we have ever heard about. I gave you the quick synopsis. Was also a man who endured great, deep betrayal at the core level of humanity. What I'm saying to you is, and I have a beautiful picture of this in a moment, but what I'm saying to you is this: it's possible to both be betrayed at the deepest level and yet still one day, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, to have a deep, meaningful friendship that lasts beyond the grave. Or partnership, intimate connection with somebody. It's possible. It's not only possible, I believe it is godly and provided here. And I think that as the more I think about getting married and our nuptials and what that looks like and everything, her and I have been talking about like what does this kind of connection look like with somebody, and how do we do this well, and how do we not make the same mistakes that we've made in the past, and how do we get rid of some of the triggers and the crap we bring over from other relationships, and not just who you're married to, or it could be a friend, it could be a parent, it could be a lot of things, but how do we give each other that reset here where we're really giving each other a fair shake as we try to build something that's more and more beautiful every day. And we were talking about it the other day because we were saying that one of the great things about Jonathan and David is they seem to complement themselves each other so well. And the best relationships have this complementary thing where it seems like one is really great at this and the other one's really not that great, and then the other one's great at this and the other one's really not that great. And I'm perfectly fine to tell you the things I'm not great at and she's great at. I will not tell you the things she's not great at and I'm great at. That list is smaller, but it's there. But recently I realized, I don't have them with me. I have left them in the car, but, well, those glasses are. Recently I realized as we were driving in the car, maybe in the last 6 months, I've realized she's starting to freak out in the passenger seat when it's time to get off the highway because I'm waiting till the last minute to exit on the exit we're supposed to exit. And it's more and more and more and more been happening, and I didn't realize it, but my vision is not what it was. My long distance things, right here I can see a piece of dust, but I have a tough time reading when they put lyrics up on the back of the room. And I didn't realize it. This is very important. I thought my vision was fine. I thought what I was seeing is what everyone was seeing. Anybody with me? It wasn't until she was doing the passenger's seat break and this, it's like she's getting the Holy Ghost, ho, 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 in the seat next to me, right? That thing, the Pentecostal shake, whoa. That I realized, I don't think this is normal. The convulsions to my right do not appear to be consistent enough to be a medical issue. So I'm not sure what's going on over here, but it's happening a lot. No, it was her going, when is he going to see the sign that says exit 131? Thank you, Tommy, I love you. By the way, your coffee is brewed by Tommy right here, and he rocks it, so thank you. There's about half the room that just got it too. There you go. So it was because I didn't realize that my vision long distance isn't as good as what I thought it was. I actually needed a partner in my life, a friend, a loved one, in this case, a fiance, to let me know what you're seeing is not as accurate as you think it is. And I can see something in this moment you can't. But I know it's hard for you to trust me. Because in the past, other people have said they've saw things that you didn't see, and it wasn't true, and it ended in betrayal and destruction, and they were manipulating you or gaslighting you or doing whatever it seems that people do to one another today to try to be right or to try to have that edge on somebody or whatever it may be. I know that's happened in the past, but can you trust me again to know enough that that is the exit you're supposed to get off on, dummy? And I know some of you in this room have relationships right now that you won't trust the other person because of mistrust from the past, and you're missing out on so much compliment that the two of you can give one another, that you can have with each other. And it might be a friend, it might be a parent, it might be a child, because we don't trust that what we're seeing may not be accurate. We either have been hurt bad enough in the past that there's so many reasons why somebody doesn't want to be wrong or doesn't want to admit that they're not as sharp as they once were. There's a lot of reasons, but it could be you grew up with a parent who their standard for you was so high that nothing seemed to be good enough, so failure was not an option. It could be that you grew up in a religious institution where failure of any sort meant the punishment was hell or God being disappointed in you, so you couldn't fail with anything. But for some reason, most of us in this room think that we have to nail every part of our life. And I'm gonna just break your hearts right now. You're not nailing it. You're recklessly getting off the interstate at the last moment because you don't see the sign until the last moment. And somebody who's probably in partnership with you in life in some capacity could have seen it a lot earlier if you and I would learn to trust. And it doesn't mean that I have to rely on that person the rest of their life. They were able to point out that you're not seeing what you think you're seeing. And you need to know that. I'm not being mean. I'm not being hurtful. I'm not being critical. I just want you to know that it is possible that there are things in my life and yours that we think we have 100% perfectly clear view on, and we don't. We need one another. We need one another. These are prescription sunglasses. I'm getting old. Oh, I can see that clear as day in the back right now. Wow, Roland, you are uglier than, well, hold on. I'm just kidding, you're beautiful. You won't even look up at this point. He's typing something. What happened to short message? See how good I could see that? It's only 11:08, relax, I'll wrap it up soon, all right? I have prescription sunglasses now, and I've got prescription regular glasses now. Here's the interesting thing. Robin doesn't see up close very well, obviously. And just had to have a moment of gratefulness. And I do. Interesting, she sees tack clear far away. I don't. we were talking about this, and she said to me, she goes, that story in the Bible about the blind man who was calling out for Jesus, or she said his friends were calling out for Jesus. And I said, babe, you're confusing two stories. In the case of the blind man was calling out for Jesus, and his friends were saying, shut up. They weren't his eyes the way they should have been. They weren't the friends that they should have been, and we can say those are terrible people, but I wonder who along the way hurt them deep enough that they would no longer even care to be there for somebody who needed them, because no one's there for them. And it's actually a perfect example. The story of the blind man, we don't call people blind anymore, they're visually impaired. So I'm gonna use that term unless I'm reading the scriptures. Visually impaired, that is the kind way to describe that, because there's all levels and types of visual impairment. So as an inclusive church, we wanna do those kind of things, right? This man was visually impaired, and he's calling out to Jesus to be healed, and Jesus hears him and of course comes up and heals him, and he says, your faith has made you whole. But in the process of that, every time he would call out for Jesus, his friends, shut up, be quiet. You think you hear Jesus? It's not Jesus. You think you hear him? It's not him. We can see, you can't. It's not Jesus. Of course, we know that story. And so I was looking in the Bible to try to find this instance where friends helped somebody. And there's some examples of it, but not necessarily anything that I thought was perfect. And so I was looking around, I'm like, there has to be a beautiful story of this. And there's actually, found in the 1st century BCE, a Greek fable. And it is called, and I'll quote it, because we don't use these terms anymore, the blind man and the lame. And it is a man with a disability for walking and a visually impaired man. And the picture is simply this. The visually impaired man who has the ability to use his legs is walking. I'm sorry, the visually impaired man, and the man who could not walk but see was on his back guiding him. And it's actually a story, and I love this. It's a story of a collaboration of two people in an effort to overcome their respective challenges. Two main things I want to say to you is this. If David can do it, if many of us in this room can do it, you can do it. You can move beyond betrayal to real connection and friendship and partnership with another human being. It's possible again. Number 2 is simply this, and this is going to be short. Number 2 is simply this. We desperately need to trust again, because we need one another in life. We need somebody who can see that sign down the road that we can't see, or let us simply know, hey, you need to get glasses. We need someone to carry us when we can't walk anymore. We need someone to pick us up when we can't stand on our own 2 feet. And it's great because people say, well, let God do it. Yeah, sure. I don't know the last time the angels came down and picked somebody up that I was aware of and put their arms underneath the person and stood them on their feet. That doesn't sound very spiritual. Well, show me. You think God wants us to make things up about him to make him feel better? He's just up there like, now they don't believe I'm coming down and lifting people off of their feet and holding them there. I'm no good as a God. He's not insecure. He's pretty cool with where he's at. Guess what? You know who lifts each other up? Us. You know who calls somebody on the phone when they've broken up with the love of their life and they haven't come out of the house in 10 days? Us. God doesn't use a telephone. Well, he can speak to them, sure, but sometimes they're not listening. Sometimes they can't hear God's voice in a moment because they're so full of despair. And while we're waiting on some cosmic thing to happen and for them to have the right moment where their spirit's open and God is speaking to them, you could have been God in that situation all along. And if you're in that situation, we, each and every one of us, can be God to you by being the Jonathan to David or the David to Jonathan, by being the person who throws you on our back and says, hey, I can't see, but you can, but I can walk and you can't, so let's go this road together. We need one another. And the reality is, no matter how long we live and how much we do and how perfect we try to be and how much we want to have our act together and how much we go to church and how much we listen to Pastor Dan because he's so brilliant and how much we go to therapy and how much we better ourselves, you're always going to have something in your life you're going to need somebody else to help you with. We will never get to a place in our life where we are perfect on our own. So here's the deal. I'm getting ready to just break the whole thing right now. I'm just gonna do it and probably preach another hour just for rolling. Just do this right now. Look at the person closest to you. They are not perfect. I want you to look at the person close to you and I want you to say to them, hey, I got some messed up things about me. Tell them, say one of them is that I'm married to you. All right? Sorry. I got some things. Now let's try this. Look to somebody you don't know for a moment or don't know well. Just catch eyes with them, okay? I want you to say, hey, I need you. I need you. Seriously. We need one another. We desperately need one another. By the way, I've built stairs that now I'm going to paint for this area right here so that I don't have to do the hippity hoppity off of here because I'm going to end down here. There you go. That was smooth. By the way, John Bibler, do not inspect the stairs I built. You will not approve. Although they are level and they will be painted well, and from a distance, if you can see like me, from a distance, they're gonna look great. Do not get up close. They're fine. Here's the thing, is that, I'll end with this. You can trust again and find people who you know can point out your blind spots, point out the things you don't have together, that you can be real enough with to say like, hey, this isn't my strength, but it seems to be your strength. I can't see exit 31 down the road there. You can. I actually don't have it all together. One of the most important things of this church is I want you to know, because I'm in the same boat, that we are very, very proud of having a congregation full of people led by a person and a board of each of us all knowing we don't have it all together. Other than Carolyn. Carolyn has it all together. We don't have it all together. We don't. And if somebody seems to have it all together, they have the most problems. We need one another. And we need to be open to relationship with somebody that'll say, hey, you realize that you're not seeing that till the last moment, right? I had no idea. I thought everybody saw it at the last moment because it was progressive over time and I didn't realize it. Well, you probably maybe need to hear me when I say, hey, that's the one you're looking for. To have the humility and the self-awareness to know, I don't know it all and I don't have it all together. And I need somebody to say, hey, here's something. And it just might happen that the reason that they're telling you that you might not see what you think you're seeing is because they are able to see it. And that might be somebody in your life that would be a valuable, long-lasting, meaningful relationship, friendship, whatever it is, the way it's supposed to be. So Harvest, let's get good in closing today. Let's get good at letting other people into our lives in a safe way with boundaries and all that, but letting them into our lives long enough to see where we might not have it all together. and to let them speak into it. And then for them to do the same thing in return. I don't know if you realized, but that's an ugly shirt. Just kidding, don't tell me that, it'll crush me. I had a great conversation with you this week, right? And we knew each other's families years ago. First time we met and sat down and talked for like an hour and a half, for an hour and 20 minutes. First time. And I'm practicing what I preached last week, authenticity, and I basically told them my whole life story. And vice versa. We got very real and raw with problems in life. And it's a great exercise. I left there going like, immediately, I like that guy because we were able to be real with each other. We left there being real. And his name's TJ, if you want to know. He's great to talk to if you're looking for somebody to talk to. He's an amazing guy. He's a life coach too. It's great to have a friend who's a life coach. And him and I had that conversation. I left there going, boom. I could have had that hour and a half conversation with him, or hour and 20 minutes. Never meant a thing to either of us because my walls were so built up. I'm not going to do this again with somebody else. But if we, like David, can say, I can be hurt at the deepest level and yet trust again, we might just find that people become a great addition and value added to our life, and we become a great addition and value add to their lives. And that, to me, is one of the greatest components of building a community together and being there for one another. And I really believe that's what the body of Christ is supposed to look like. It's 11:20. I love you. Get out of here. Hey, next week, we're not going to pray. I'll do a quick prayer. Next week, tradition. Next week, after church on Sunday, her and I will have been married for 2 days. I will have the biggest smile on my face left to right. She will probably be so depressed. But anyways, next week on Sunday, we are going to have a little get together after church. We're going to have a food truck. We're going to bring some cake or dessert of some sort, and we want to celebrate with you. That is not so you will buy us gifts and cards. It's because we can't have everyone here for the wedding because we're paying for it ourselves, and y'all are expensive. And we want to have as many people celebrate with us. We want to shake your hand, hug you, say thank you, all that stuff. So join us next Sunday for church. I'll be speaking before we go away, and that's kind of how we planned it. I wanted to be here one last Sunday, and then we'll head out of town after church and after we get a chance to hang out with you guys. So please come and hang out. It would be such a blessing for us, for you to be here and to have some food and to eat some cake with us or whatever, and for us to be able to hug your neck. It would be great. Let's pray. Father, we thank you today. You can stand up. Thank you for this message and word. Thank you that we can trust again, that we can live life again in a way where we are both adding value to the lives of those around us, and that they are able to speak into our life and let us know maybe where we just don't quite see something clearly. Or let this be something that we take a hold of and put into practice in our lives as quickly as we possibly can, moving beyond the pain of our past, moving beyond the betrayals, the mistrust, the things that we said we would never, ever, ever open our hearts up to again. Let us begin the process of doing that today. We thank you. In your name we pray, and everyone says, Amen. Amen. We'll see you next week. Love you guys.